Hello, I've just made a little video to talk a little bit about the backgrounds and some of my thoughts and thinking on the gameplay and what I was trying to achieve for the player and the kind of experience they would have playing the game, but also a little bit about why I made certain decisions on the environments and the backgrounds. So here we are. These are the five pieces of artwork for each of the levels. They did start out as concept drawings, but I felt they were actually so good that they didn't need a lot more doing to them in terms of how they could fit into the game. I was really happy with them. Um, I would definitely wanted there to be some kind of flow between the five levels and give the player the impression that Max was going on some sort of journey. So you can see here, the game starts in the bottom left with Max in his village, and he has to climb up through the trees to the very top, where he finds himself inside this giant tree trunk that he has to make his way up. Next level goes through a beehive, and the next level after that, up into some traditional kind of greenery that I suppose you would expect to see in nature. And finally, Magpie's Kingdom, which is a very stark, kind of barren place. You'll also notice that I've tried to get a sense of a day or two passing, hence the kind of morning light through to daytime, could be morning, could be afternoon, and through to dusk and evening. So I did want to give the player the impression that some time has elapsed to give the impression that Max has gone on a quest, a journey. And the actual final boss level takes place at night, so that helps to reinforce the idea of maybe a day or two in Max's life. Um, let's take a look at this, which is some of the room construction in GameMaker. Um, Starting in the bottom left-hand corner down here with Max, I began to distribute the blocks and the gems in such a way that it would give the player interesting little situations as to how to get that particular diamond, how they could either utilize or avoid the insects, and just to make it interesting, really, and not a game that the player could blast through, but they would have to give it a little bit of thought and a little bit of consideration. This first level is quite generous in terms of what blocks you are allowed to interact with. You can interact with practically all of them, all the brown ones and all the bark ones down the sides. You can attach platforms too, so you can see there are numerous ways, and actually it is absolutely necessary to get the gems at some point to use the platforms around here. Since Max can't jump that far, he would have to think about a way that he can distribute his yellow platforms to get the two gems up here. Similarly, to work his way up a wall here and get this one, he would need to put one there, one there, one there, one there, maybe in a kind of zigzag pattern. The grey destructibles Max can destroy with the purple shot that he's got. And yeah, that's about it for that level, really. I just wanted to give the player a good understanding of how the game mechanics work without making it too difficult. Although having said that, there are points when it does get slightly challenging. Um, for example, around here, I think in the final game I took one of those two little bugs there out because I just felt it was getting too difficult to get through there without being hit. Similarly, the player has to be really careful around this gem. I've found you can drop in and drop out, but it does take a level of skill. There are times when it looks almost impossible to get the gem, but I've made sure there is always a way to do it. For example, this area here, with this little bug going backwards and forwards, the way that you do it is to blast all of these out of the way, shoot yellow shot that goes all the way to the side of the screen, and it will actually stack up regardless of whether you can see the target or not, it will stack up across the game's level, and that kind of gives Max a kind of sticky kind of bridge that he can cross. So moving on to the second room, you can see I've put in less platforms, and also I've started to use larger insects and started to use them more sparingly as well. It kind of gets to the point where Max, in some ways, I wanted to give the player a choice whether Max could go one way or another. For example, here, he could maybe jump on the back of this caterpillar creature, get that diamond, jump out again, and work his way up to the diamond through going through this gap maybe. Or he could work his way around the destructibles and up along here, the grey blocks. What I have started doing on this level is trying to put in ways that the player has to progress down one-way systems and come out again. So he almost has to kind of backtrack on himself. And that is kind of elaborated on in later levels where you would have to go up to the top to get a diamond and deliberately fall back down because otherwise it's totally unreachable. Blast your way through some blocks and work your way all the way up again. So that was something I was really, really interested in, rather than just making the diamonds into an ABC kind of collectible path, actually forcing the player to backtrack on themselves and come out at a different point. This is an example of the beehive where more kind of dodging is required, I guess, as these kind of bees move up and down quite quickly. And there are one or two gems within those bee flight paths. The player has to be very, very careful about how he retrieves them. It is quite a challenging level. There are ways you can do it. Maybe the player could sort of use yellow blocks platforms to get up the wall here. Maybe you could sort of shoot across and cut in, and maybe you could time it so he can nip in and out and get them. Or he can just maybe go for broke, go from here up to here, jump across and back. So there are numerous ways. There's almost on every level. You could say there's an easy path and a hard path. I wanted to take a look now at building the levels and some of my thought processes. You can see here in this screenshot, I was actually building the Magpie's Kingdom level towards the end. And this is it's an example of the puzzle I was talking about backtracking actually. So I make a fairly kind of simple platform system here, first of all. A couple of grey blocks. I'm consciously thinking about how far Max can jump, whether it's going to make it impossible for Max to progress in the game, given that these red foliage blocks, Max can't interact with them in any way whatsoever. So it does make progress a little bit more difficult. So I've started to lay out some of the building blocks for the level. And then what I tried to do was think about how I could elaborate on it. I began to get this idea that you had to go up and then drop down and go up again. And I think that makes for more interesting level design than just running in a straight line. You can see I've just dropped in an enemy there just to keep things slightly more interesting and an element of danger. Yeah, and here you can see I've really begun to think about, okay, I could blast through that block, but how do I get up here? Given that these are not usable. I've also started to hide usable blocks in the wall that the player might not spot straight away, but they are part of the solution to the puzzle. Yeah, in this instance, Max can break this block, stack up platforms all the way along here, possibly. If he can't jump to there, which I don't think he can, then he would have to think about using a platform, and the solution to the puzzle lies in a block that is off screen. So Max has to shoot through this grey block, stack up the platforms along here, and that just gives him that extra bit of edge to get to that platform, that next platform. And I think after that, Max has to shoot there. So if he fires a shot in the air and sticks to it, then he has to just tap up to work his way up, build his next platform there, and so on and so on. So it does get a little bit more cerebral and puzzle based rather than action based. But I think that's good. It's going to make for a more interesting sort of game. And that's the end of my look at the construction of the rooms. Yeah, I hope you found that interesting, and I hope you enjoy looking at the gameplay video that I've made.